There is not a single specific murder to say where these killings started. There were a chain of killings by year after year in Long Island. Let's get back to the time where these things started. 1996. Karen Vergata, a woman from Manhattan who is believed to have been working as a sex worker when she disappeared in 1996. Karen was unidentified for 27 years. Vergata legs were found in a garbage bag on Fire Island on 20th April 1996. Karen was disappeared on 14th of February 1996. A petition filed in court in 2017 reveals that the Karen called her father Dominic Vergata on his birthday on 14 February 1996. She was never seen or heard from again. 15 years later, on April 11, 2011, her skull and several of her teeth were recovered at Gilgo Beach. Karen murder was not identified till date. June 28, 1997, Jane Doe or Peaches. Jane Doe, John Doe and Jane Doe are multiple-use placeholder names that are used in the United Kingdom when the true name of a person is unknown. In 2011, the torso of young American African woman was found at Hempstead Lake State Park in the town of Lakeview, New York. The torso was found in a green plastic Rubbermaid container, which was dumped next to a road along the west side of the lake. Investigators reported that Doe has heart-shaped peach tattoo on her left breast. On April 11, 2011, the police discovered a skeletal human remains inside a plastic bag near Jones Beach State Park. The victim is described as Jane Doe No. 3. In 2016, through DNA testing, it was positively identified that Peaches and Jane Doe No. 3 are same person. In 2002, a 24-year-old woman named Valerie Mack went missing. She was living in Philadelphia and working as an escort when she went missing. She was approximately 5 feet and 100 pounds. Valerie's torso was found wrapped in garbage bags and dumped in the woods near the intersection of Halsey Manor Road and Mill Road, adjacent to a set of power lines and a nearby power line access road, were discovered in Manorville on November 19, 2000, but were not identified until 2020. A head, right foot, and hands found on April 4, 2011, were at first determined to have belonged to an unidentified victim, dubbed Jane Doe No. 6. It was later determined that they belonged to the same woman whose torso had been found in 2000. On May 28, 2020, police announced that the remains had been identified as Valerie Mack. The dismembered remains of Valerie Mack and Jessica Taylor were both disposed of in a similar manner and in the same part of Manorville, suggesting a link. A 20-year-old woman named Jessica Taylor went missing on July 21, 2003. 5 days later, her naked and dismembered torso, missing its head and hands, was discovered 45 miles 72 km east of Gilgo Beach in Manorville. Taylor's torso was found atop a pile of scrap wood at the end of a paved access road off Halsey Manor Road, just north of where it crosses the Long Island Expressway. Plastic sheeting was found underneath the torso, and a tattoo on her body had been mutilated with a sharp instrument. Remains were identified by DNA analyses later that year. Further remains found on March 29, 2011, matched to Taylor, including a skull, a pair of hands, and a forearm. She had worked in Washington, D.C. and Manhattan as a sex worker. Taylor was last seen working around the Port Bus Authority terminal in Manhattan between July 18 and 22, 2003. In 2007, Maureen Brainard Barnes was a 25-year-old independent working woman in Norwich, Connecticut. She was 25 when she disappeared. On July 9, 2007, she planned to spend the day in New York City, and she was never seen again. A mother of 2, worked as a sex worker via Craigslist to pay the mortgage on her house. She had been out of the sex industry for 7 months, but she returned to the work in order to pay her bills after receiving an eviction notice. Her body was found in December 2010. At the time of her disappearance, she was working at a Super 8 motel in Manhattan. On the night of July 9, 2007, she called a friend in Connecticut and told her that she was planning on meeting a client outside of the motel. Like many of the victims, Brainard Barnes was very petite, at 4'11". One thing I found common in all these victims was they were all very petite, listing at below average women height. The victims whose discovered in 2010 December were known as Gilgo 4 and Barnes was the one. 2009 Melissa Bartholomew, a 24-year-old in Erie County, New York, went missing on July 12, 2009. On the night she went missing, she met with a client, deposited $900 in her bank account, and attempted to call an old boyfriend, but did not get through. Beginning 1 week later, and lasting for 5 weeks, her teenage sister Amanda received a series of vulgar, mocking, and insulting calls from a man who may have been the killer using Melissa Bartholomew's cell phone. She had living in Bronx as a sex worker through Craigslist. Bartholomew's mother noted that there were a lot of calls to Manorville from her daughter's phone around the time of her disappearance. In September 2017, a prosecutor suggested John Bitrolf, a carpenter from that town convicted of 2 other murders, might be responsible for some of the Gilgo Beach cases. Bartholomew was 4 ft 10 and 1. 47 m tall and 95 pounds 43 kg. This is a year where a lot killings takes place. Shannan Gilbert, the killing which boosts the case so much that everyone started knowing the Gilgo Beach killing case. Shannan advertised her services on Craigslist for $200 an hour. In one night, she would reportedly earn about $600. On May 1, 2010, Shannan went to Joseph Brewer's residence in Oak Beach, Long Island. He had hired her through Craigslist amid a separation from his wife. So Gilbert went there with Michael Pack, a driver she had worked with before. Pack stayed behind in the vehicle while Gilbert went inside Brewer's house. Hours later, Brewer called Pack for help, allegedly because Shannan was behaving erratically. Shannan called 911 from Brewer's home and kept the dispatcher on the line for 23 minutes. There are other voices on the call telling her to calm her down. Shannan didn't tell the dispatcher her exact location, possibly because she didn't know after being driven there. Pack believed Gilbert was on drugs and claimed to have gone back to the car. Minutes later, he said, Gilbert bolted from the house and began pounding on the doors of Brewer's neighbors. One neighbor reportedly tried to help her, but she didn't let him call 911. Pack had followed her in the vehicle, but at some point, she went out of sight. He looked for her around Oak Beach, but when he couldn't find her, he gave up and returned to the city. Brewer, Pack, and the neighbor were investigated by the police for Shannan's disappearance. Brewer claimed that there were no drugs or sexual contact that night. On December 13, 2011, police announced that the remains of Shannan Gilbert had been found in a marsh about half a mile from where she had disappeared. A week earlier, some of her clothing and belongings had been discovered in the same vicinity. And this is the 911 call recording of Shannan Gilbert.
State Police.
Yeah, there's somebody after me.
I'm sorry?
There's somebody after me.
Where are you?
There's somebody after me.
Okay, where are you?
A month after Gilbert incident, another killing takes place. Megan was 22-year-old woman, went missing on June 6, 2010, after placing advertisements on Craigslist as an escort. At the time of her disappearance, she was staying at a motel in Hauppauge, New York, 15 miles northeast of Gilgo Beach. Her body was recovered in December 2010. Waterman was a mother of 1 and had become a victim of sex trafficking. Waterman was 5 ft 5. Just after 3 months, another takes place. Amber Lynn Costello, a 27-year-old woman living in West Babylon, New York, a small town 10 miles north of Gilgo Beach, was a sex worker and heroin user who went missing on September 2, 2010. That night, she reportedly went to meet a stranger who had called her several times and offered $1,500 for her services. Costello had been living with her second husband in Clearwater, Florida, and was working as a waitress. A strong student, Costello's drug addiction began when she was a teenager. She had been sexually assaulted by a neighbor when she was 6 years old. Costello was 4 ft 11 in and weighed approximately 100 pounds. March 29, 2011. Further partial remains of Jessica Taylor found along Ocean Parkway, Long Island, New York. April 4, 2011. Remains of Valerie Mack, Asian male, and baby doe, the 24-month-old daughter of Peaches, found in brush area along Ocean Parkway, Long Island, New York. April 11, 2011. Further partial remains of Peaches/Jane Doe No. 3 found near Jones Beach State Park, Long Island, New York. Further partial remains of Karen Vergata found, Tobay Beach, Long Island, New York. December 13, 2011. Remains of Shannan Gilbert found in a marsh, Oak Beach, Long Island, New York. There are also other possible victims of this case such as Tina Elizabeth Foglia, Jacqueline Ashley Smith, Andre Jamal Isaac, Jamie Diane Seymour, Tanya Rush, Shannan Maria Gilbert, Natasha Jugo, Patricia Viola. Unidentified victims such as Cherries/Unidentified Woman, Mamaroneck Unidentified Woman, Laddingtown. According to the New York Times, the perpetrator was most likely a white male in his mid-20s to mid-40s and very familiar with the South Shore of Long Island and had access to burlap sacks used to hold the bodies for disposal. He may have a detailed knowledge of law enforcement techniques, and perhaps ties to law enforcement, which have thus far helped him avoid detection. According to investigators, there may be more than one killer. On July 13, 2023, Heurman was arrested in connection with 3 of the Gilgo Beach murders. His home and other locations are being searched. And that's the Gilgo Beach story. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Thanks for watching. This is CrimeCrypt. Till then, signing out.